The story begins by showing the police investigating a case at a company. They came because they received a report from Zhu Jiai, the owner of this company. He claims to have received death threats from an unknown person. Because the threat is quite serious, this task is immediately handled by the best criminal detective in the city, and that person is Moyen, a senior commander who has solved major cases many times. Starting from the bank robbery case, the kidnapping case of the richest man in Hong Kong, to other serious cases. Long story short, Moyen and his subordinates immediately confirmed that the threat Zhou received was not a prank. Then after waiting for 2 hours, suddenly something surprising happened. The company's stock, which should have increased rapidly, instead experienced a red plummet, until it experienced a drastic decline. And not only that, this problem also made a shock in the country, including the shareholders in Zhao's company. As a result, Moyen immediately held an emergency meeting. In this meeting, he suspected that the mastermind was a very rich person, because there is no way a poor person can play the world of stocks. Elsewhere, there is a rich man named Humingzu. It turned out that he was the mastermind of the decline in shares in Zhao's company, and this time he is planning his next crime. And in carrying out his actions, Humingzu was assisted by Uncle Xi, a former doctor who is now his advisor. Even though he has committed many crimes, Humingzu still has a good side, where he is very protective of the people he cares about, especially his lover who is being intensively treated, just call her Yuan. It is known this woman has been in a coma for 5 years, but here it is not clear why she can experience this. At the same time, Moyen was summoned by Inspector Bai, his superior. In the room, the inspector was angry because the stock case had been taken over by another division. And in order to get a bonus from the higher-ups, he told Moyen to keep investigating the case. Without wasting time, he immediately gave orders to his men to investigate Zhao's company in more depth. Then his member named Emin discovered the fact that the company had committed a fraud. In fact, it is suspected of killing people to launch its business. Emin then showed a free.com site containing information about crimes that occurred in Hong Kong. And Moyen also asked her to dig deeper until she got the info she needed. After that, Moyen and his team returned to Zhao's company. There, he persuaded Zhou to cooperate with the police and to give honest testimony about his company's scandal. Later that evening, Moyen looked at the website to find some information. On the website, he found an animal torture video that made him very angry. Moyen called his team and immediately tracked down the IP of the torturer, but the perpetrator tried to escape. And as a result, Moyen and team broke down the door of his house. Luckily, they were able to catch the culprit, and when searching the house, Moyen was very surprised to find a man tied up and duct taped. Apparently, the perpetrator not only tortures animals, but also humans. But when interrogated, the torturer seemed out of his mind and often laughed to himself. He also said that all his crimes were committed in the name of justice. Even though all the animals and people he had tortured were completely innocent, and hearing that, Moyen ordered his men to immediately transfer the perpetrator to the court so that he could be sent to prison. The next day, Uncle Xi informed Humingzu that Yuan had recovered from her coma, but for the time being, he was not allowed to talk to her, because physically, Yuan was still unable to speak and move normally. Even so, Humingzu was very grateful to the uncle for healing his lover. On the other hand, Moyen was having a meeting with his team. Then Moyen told his men to find out the IP address of every account on the website, and if anyone deliberately hides his IP, then that person will be the target of the next operation. A few days later, Moyen got a report about the kidnapping of 10 of the wealthiest real estate entrepreneurs in Hong Kong, and according to him, this case must be related to the incident 5 years ago, when there was an apartment collapse incident. Not long after that, Emin found a new account on the site discussing the case. He also became suspicious that the person was the mastermind of the kidnapping. Then it is shown with the events of 5 years ago, when Yuan wasn't yet in a coma. The scene returns to 5 years ago. At that time, Yuan had just returned to the apartment and was about to cook for his parents. But while he was preparing the ingredients, there was a huge shock. Eventually, the apartment collapsed. Back to the present, Moyen was seen in a park, but he accidentally saw a mysterious man in a culvert. Because it looked suspicious, Moyen immediately chased him at that time. Too bad he failed to catch him because of fatigue. Without thinking, Moyen immediately informed his subordinates. Then he told them to ask for help from the culvert department in order to find the mysterious man. And unexpectedly, the culvert department found several mutilated bodies. Apparently, the corpses were real estate businessmen who were victims of kidnapping. Fortunately, there were still people who could be saved. But while the evacuation process was underway, there was an officer who took away the ambulance. And it turned out that the person was Humingzu in disguise. Not remaining silent, Moyen and team immediately acted, and the chase action ensued. Because he failed to catch Humingzu, Moyen was severely scolded by Inspector Bai. Because he was too angry, the inspector gave him 10 days to solve this case to its roots. Not long after, the ambulance that Humingzu had robbed was finally found. But unfortunately, all the victims had died in terrible conditions. Here, Moyen concluded that the motive was revenge for the collapsed apartment, because all the kidnapped businessmen were the ones who funded the construction of the Casey apartment. Therefore, Moyen asked his team to find the identities of all the victims of the case. Elsewhere, Yuan saw the news of the murder that occurred last night, and he also seemed suspicious that Humingzu was the one behind all this. Meanwhile, Moyen went to the hospital to find out about the victims of the apartment collapse. Then the nurse told him that there was one special patient named Yuan who had now been transferred by his family. Thanks to the information from the nurse, he finally knew that Humingzu was the one who transferred Yuan from the hospital. Wasting no time, he went straight to Humingzu's luxurious mansion located in the middle of the forest. But strangely enough, the man already knew everything about Moyen, and could even name all the cases he had handled. Not wanting to talk too much, Moyen finally asked about the incident in the culvert when he chased a mysterious man. But Humingzu said that he didn't have a habit of jogging in the middle of the night. Meanwhile, Uncle Zhai was not happy with the accusation. He also asked him to bring clear evidence, because without evidence, the police should not accuse people carelessly. Before Moyen returned to his office, Humingzu sent his regards to Inspector Bai. And of course he felt confused as to how a man could know his superior. After the policemen left, Humingzu went to his girlfriend to prepare lunch, but Yuan suddenly asked if he was the one who killed the businessman. Suddenly, Humingzu was immediately evasive and tried to calm his girlfriend. He also convinces Yuan not to believe the news on television, which is definitely controlled by the global elite. On the other hand, Moyen met the inspector to report the progress of the case, as well as greetings from Humingzu. He then asked if his superiors knew Humingzu, but Inspector Bai admitted that he had never met him, let alone knew him. Moyen believed his answer and went back to hold an investigation meeting with his team. Not long after, he received a report from a school principal whose daughter had just been kidnapped by someone. The principal seemed very worried about his daughter's safety, and at the same time, he received a call informing him that his daughter was being held hostage in the school building, and to make matters worse, the building had a bomb installed to kill the child. Without further delay, Moyen and his team rushed to the scene of the crime. There, the journalists had gathered to cover this tense incident. Meanwhile, the principal was seen making an angry phone call to someone. He also threatened to expose all his rottenness to the public if anything happened to his favorite daughter, and it turned out that the person he was calling was Inspector Bai. Here it was finally revealed that the two of them had worked together with Zhao's company to commit money laundering and corruption of school funds. At the same time, the bomb squad members informed Moyen that they had found 5 time bombs that would explode within 10 minutes. As a result, there was no chance to dismantle all the bombs in such a short time. Therefore, everyone around the building had to be evacuated to a safer place immediately. Hearing that, the principal pleaded with Moyen to save his daughter first, and without thinking, he immediately ran into the building. With 9 minutes left, Moyen checked every room but never found the principal's daughter, and just as he wanted to give up, he suddenly heard the sound of drums beating, and it turned out that the principal's daughter was being held in the music hall. Moyen immediately untied her and brought her out. At the same time, Yuan seemed to be able to move his limbs. He then tried to get up from the bed, then walked towards the kitchen. But he accidentally found Humingzu's secret room, and from here he was even more convinced that his girlfriend was the mastermind of the viral murder. At the police station, Moyen's subordinates still couldn't digest the heinous act of the perpetrator who almost killed a child. Then, not long after, Moyen ordered his men to check all the CCTV footage around the school building, because he believes the perpetrator must be at the scene and watching the movements of the police. With the CCTV footage, Moyen finally knew that the culprit was Humingzu. He then went to Inspector Bay to apply for an arrest warrant. But suddenly, there was chaos inside the Hong Kong police station, where the entire police station computer was hacked by hackers. And now all the monitors display data about Humingzu along with his photo. Then, when all the police were panicking, Humingzu deliberately called Moyen. In essence, Humingzu told Moyen that the next target was Inspector Bai. Moyen also asked him to tell the truth about his relationship with this case. And finally, the inspector told him that he was still related to Humingzu. Here's the story. In the past, he wanted to bribe Humingzu's mother to shut up her journalist husband from covering negative news about Zhao's company. However, the woman refused the illicit money and said that everyone has the right to know the truth. And because of these words, the inspector was furious and immediately beat her in front of Humingzu. After hearing his explanation, Moyen felt very disappointed. And he also didn't expect the person he respected all this time turned out to be a rotten cop. In the evening, Yuan expressed his gratitude to Humingzu for always accompanying him during his coma. In fact, Humingzu could have left Yuan at any time. However, at the same time, Yuan also felt disappointed after finding the secret room in her house. And Yuan also thought that Humingzu was no different from the businessman he killed. Humingzu didn't feel guilty either, because they all deserved a cruel avenge. Moreover, they deliberately corrupted the money for apartment construction, so that the building collapsed and fell on Yuan. In addition, Humingzu also didn't believe in the legal process in his country, so the only way was to finish off the elite criminals. Yuan, who didn't want her boyfriend to lose his way, finally called the police and told them everything. The police then came to the house to collect the evidence. Then they took Yuan to a safe place. From a distance, Humingzu, who had run away, looked disappointed because Yuan reported him to the police. He then contacted Moyen and asked him to meet her somewhere. Long story short, they finally arrived at the area, and there Moyen immediately pointed a gun at Humingzu. But unfortunately, Humingzu had installed a bomb on his body. Humingzu then exposed the rottenness of Inspector Bai, who had received a bribe of 50 million yuan. And all of that was a gift from businessmen, so that the police would not investigate the case of the apartment collapse. Therefore, Humingzu will bring all the evidence he has to the Hong Kong ICAC. The next day, Moyen met Inspector Bai in his office, and because of last night's information, he was even more disappointed in his superiors. Then not long after, the corruption officers came to the police station to arrest Inspector Bai for corruption. Suddenly, all the police officers were shocked by the arrest. Unfortunately, the corrupt cop could escape. On the same day, the police received a report from a citizen who saw Humingzu beat up Inspector Bai. Moyen immediately went to his superior's house with a SWAT team. And before they went inside, Humingzu expressed his disappointment with the law enforcement in his country. He had hoped that Inspector Bai would be punished fairly. But, in fact, they couldn't catch him. So, inevitably, he had to punish him by himself. And after a long argument, he immediately attacked the SWAT team brutally, until finally a shootout ensued. When cornered, Humingzu said that Moyen was the only competent and honest law enforcer. He is also very confident that this police officer can limit crime indiscriminately. Humingzu then walked towards the door and intended to kill himself. However, Moyen would not let that happen. Luckily, Moyen could save Humingzu and immediately took him to the hospital. And afterward, Moyen intends to throw him into prison along with Inspector Bai. Because even though he wanted to uphold justice, the way Humingzu did it was not right and could harm innocent people. And along with the arrest of Humingzu and the corrupt Inspector Bai, the movie ended.